personally, the first two renovations I did, I was using all of my own money. That was a lot more stressful. So I feel like getting into it, getting past the first two, this is the third. I've learned something new every time. I feel seasoned at this point.
Have you ever wanted to take on renovations within your rental properties? If so, you have got to listen to Paige's story on today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Paige, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining me. I love when we have members come on from the group to share what this is actually like day to day, what it's like to really be in real estate. So I'm really excited to talk about what you've been working on over the past year. But why don't you just start off by just kind of giving a quick introduction of who you, the woman Paige, is kind of behind real estate investing.
Cool. Yeah, I'm a mom of three, which takes up a lot of time. I have a 16-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. Love Taylor Swift. Longtime Swiftie, and my daughters love her now too, so that's a lot of fun. DIY is kind of where I started, so doing a lot of like small projects, sewing, building small things, golfing, being outside, hiking, anything to get outside. Recently taken on pickleball. So just a little bit
Ooh,
about me.
okay. Pickleball, I have not tried it yet. That is
Yeah.
on my list. There's a
Mhm.
new pickleball court down across the street from where I live in the Dominican Republic. So I'm
Okay.
excited to go back there and
Yeah.
test that out. So because I know that's like, the craze. Taylor Swift and pickleball, I feel like is just taking over
Seriously.
the world.
Yeah.
So
For real.
so you've worked, and I know a little bit about some of your career history in the past.
Mhm.
Where did real estate pop up for you along this journey?
So my dad has owned properties my whole life. Even before that, my grandparents owned a motel that was like a drive-up motel that was
Oh my
built in
God.
the 50s. They bought in the 70s or 80s. My dad bought that in the 90s. It was like a drive-up motel with a campground and a honeymoon cottage. He started buying houses as well, and he started
Mhm.
converting it into apartments. I've always been around that, and he managed it all himself. He did
Huh.
all the maintenance on everything, so I was just always around that environment. And then my grandparents lived in Fort Myers half the time,
Mhm.
and going into model homes, like, my grandma just loved design. So I really got that aspect of renovating too and design because my grandma was always redoing her house and we were always going to model homes. So I was just always around it. So that really grew to my interest.
I also feel like that might have been where you picked up some of that DIY
Mhm.
type
Oh, for
love,
sure.
right? Just how with her with the design,
Oh,
those
yeah.
types of things, also seeing your father always doing these things himself, it
Mhm.
sounds like planted the seed.
Yeah.
At what point though did you say, like after you saw that, throughout your entire childhood from all your family members, it sounds like, where did that click in? Like, do you feel like when you were a teenager or like in your 20s that you were like, yeah, of course I'm eventually going to buy like my own investment properties, or where did that kind of snap in for you?
Well, I think I always thought about it. I just didn't know how to do it. I had my oldest whenever I was 18. So I was a young mom. So
Yeah.
that really, kind of crushed my confidence a little and like how am I going to do this? I don't
Hmm.
know. And then I was a single mom also. So it took a while for me to figure out how I was going to do anything. But I think moving to St. Louis in the city here, there's so many multifamily homes. And I lived in the city for a long time and I was like, wow, there's so many rentals. And I started talking to my dad about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many investment properties up here. And then I'm seeing all these people doing flips. And it just started getting my juices flowing. And so then I bought my first house. And it really wasn't a fixer upper. It was kind of like a builder grade house.
Hmm.
But that's when did my first backsplash. That's when we built my first deck. I built raised garden beds. That was like the first time I had actually started working with power tools and doing some of those things, and I just never stopped.
Well, I gotta say, Backsplash. You had me after backsplash,
Yeah.
because when you said that, right, I'm saying the way that I'm picturing that too. You can go to Home Depot, kind of pick it out, cool, put that up on the wall. It's usually a pretty finite kind of space. So I was like,
Mhm.
okay, great introduction to doing some renovations. And then the
Yeah.
next word that you said was deck.
Yeah. Yeah,
Then
my
you
dad
said then
definitely
you said
helped with
flower
that.
beds. Then you said power tools. Did you just wake up in the morning and said, "You know what I should do today? I'm gonna learn to build stairs. I'm gonna learn to put something that's gonna be supported with weight on it."
Well, when you have undiagnosed ADHD, that is, you do wake up and you're like, "This is what I'm gonna do today." Yeah. But also having my dad as a resource and knowing,
Mhm.
like, we can figure this out. Also,
Yeah.
like, having my dad in my back
Yeah.
pocket, I always knew, like, we were gonna be able to figure it out.
That's awesome. So now building it, was it more something that he came and was with you there and was like, "Hey, don't put your finger here on the saw," or was he the one that taught you how to use some of those items? Because that's a big question we get often in Lady Landlords. How do I even learn to, and you're talking about a deck here.
Mhm. Yeah.
I was like, how do we learn to paint? How do we even start that level? How did you learn from just watching him and having him train you, or was there anything else that you did to kind of get those skills?
Well, he had never actually done tiling. I did the backsplash myself from watching YouTube. The deck, he really was the main person, and then I
Mhm.
was watching and helping.
Very cool.
Um,
And then you said flower beds, right? So now you're adding
so
on those,
the raised garden beds, I just did that myself. Yeah.
and you did those,
Yeah.
right? So it sounds
Mhm.
like, kind of first time kind of watching somebody else, learning
Yep.
from that, and being able to take that on your own would
Yep.
really happen next. Okay.
Mhm.
Did you do any other projects on that house? Because that's where you were living at the time.
Yeah. I mean, besides, like, literally tearing up the whole backyard, like, a lot of landscaping projects, but
Okay.
nothing really inside. But yeah,
Okay.
we put in all new grass. I did, like, the whole landscaping in the front, but yeah.
Okay. So that
Mhm.
gets you into that, even though it was your personal home, that gets you into that personal home renovations still at
Mhm.
that point. But you
Mhm.
ended up moving from there and moving into another house,
I
correct?
did. Mhm.
Right. And that was the one that you did a lot more work on, right?
Yeah. Yep, we renovated the whole first floor.
Okay.
Yeah,
At that point in time, though, you sold the first house, correct?
we did. Yep.
Right. So now you move into this other one. Now you had to renovate everything. What was that experience like?
Mm, it was a lot. We lived in it as is for a couple years before
Mhm.
we really tackled, like, the big main first floor. But for the first couple of years, it was about, like, tearing wallpaper off the walls, and
Mhm.
I spent hours taking wallpaper off the walls and just doing little projects, like little, board and batten projects and painting
Mhm.
and things like that. Just trying to spice it up. It was a builder grade 1970s house. It
Mhm.
didn't have any spice at all. But yeah, I back in 2020, I feel like when everybody was renovating, we renovated the whole first floor.
Right.
And it was a huge gut renovation. It was taking the kitchen and
Mhm.
expanding it from the current kitchen into the dining room. So it
Wow.
was moving all of the it was taking down walls, putting up beams, moving all the electric, all the plumbing, everything.
Now, was that work that you guys mostly did yourselves, or did you hire and have outside support on that?
I was the GC basically, and then I hired out the electric, the plumbing, someone to do the beam,
Okay.
but I did design the kitchen and then went and picked out all the stone and everything. Hired someone to install things, but picked
But
up.
that's still a lot of work that you're doing on your own, even within that,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And that wasn't your full-time job,
I
right?
stayed
That wasn't
home then. I did work
okay,
part-time, but I was also staying home with my kids then too. Mhm.
gotcha. But with still staying home with kids, that's not sitting around eating bonbons, like
No,
that's still, especially with 3 kids, right?
and 2 little
That takes
kids
a
at
lot.
home. Yeah.
Right. And so, I don't have kids. I don't know a lot about them, but I'm pretty sure they don't mix well with power tools. Right. So I'm sure trying to figure out how to kind of keep them away of, once again, you're talking about moving all this electric, all of that. That must have been still a struggle in itself. Nice you
Yeah.
didn't have a far commute, but I have the feeling that probably trying to keep the kids away from that was, half the battle.
Yeah, thankfully, it was a large house, so we had a basement and we had an upstairs, but also, like, not having a kitchen for 6 months,
Wow.
yeah, because there were a lot of delays. So I learned a lot about permits, and I don't think I'll ever buy in St. Louis County again.
Okay.
Um, I learned a lot because my recent renovation I just did is in St. Louis City,
Mhm.
a lot more laid back. So I think
Right.
that I will continue to purchase there.
Okay. All right, we're gonna talk about that one a little bit. But
Yeah.
still then finishing up that kitchen and redoing that first floor,
Mhm.
that was still personal home, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, at what point did you kind of say like, "Hey, I think I wanna move into the rental space and do this on other properties?"
Well, this is where it gets a little personal. I was married at the time, and my partner wasn't very supportive of that.
Mm,
He wasn't exactly a risk taker, whereas I am much more of a risk taker. I see the long-term benefit, and I also find joy in passion, and
mm.
I don't want to just work until I die, I don't want to just, like, be bored for the rest of my life and working, and
Right.
I find a lot of joy in renovating. So, anyway, I think at that point, I would not have been doing this today
Interesting.
because I would not have been supported.
Right. And
Mhm,
it's interesting. We see a lot of couples that usually one tends to be a little bit more of the risk taker, the other
mhm,
one tends to be a little more risk adverse. But it
mhm,
just seems that once again, it was just that would have just held you back. Just
mhm,
so for you to even say, like, I just would not have done any of it.
mhm. I mean, I'm surprised that I even did that renovation. Yeah,
Yeah.
which
Okay.
I did do it mostly with my own money.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's also pretty telling about, to be able to do that on then once again your the personal home.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
But and what's interesting to me is I feel like even since you and I met, like the design, the passion for those renovations was something that we talked about at the very, very beginning. That was
Yeah.
something that you always that's why we kind of decided to go this route to continue to do renovations because it seemed
Mhm.
to be something that really lit you up. So
Mm,
I am so happy to know that you are now in a space that allows you to really enjoy the things that light you up in
yeah.
such a way.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
So because
Yeah.
that was around when we met then, right? When you said, "Okay, let's start I wanna really be able to take this and start doing this for rental properties," if I remember correctly, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Do you
Mhm.
remember how you ended up in Lady Landlords?
Well, my partner now, her friend is who introduced her to your online group.
Right, because
Yes.
I remember that it was your partner that had found Lady Landlords, but I
Yes.
didn't know it came
Mhm.
from somebody else. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. We're like 3
Mhm.
degrees of separation here.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you
Mhm.
came into the group, you see
Mhm.
all these women in there talking about, who's renovating this, not just I mean, we kind of have the 2 or 3 parts to the group. We really
Yeah.
have the people that are looking just to buy their first rental
Yeah.
or be able to scale their portfolios. We have the people that are working on certain renovations that are actually working on like properties like in that space then. And then we have people that most of the conversations are usually about that tenant management side, actually working with tenants and what issues are coming up within that tenancy.
Yeah.
When you saw that, what made you say like, "Oh yeah, this is it. This is kind of my home. This is my next big project."
I think it was the financing. I think I just didn't know. I knew there was a way to
Mhm.
figure out financing, but I didn't know how. And I knew I was never going to get there by myself. And that was my biggest hurdle. Like, how am I going to figure this out? Also, like, confident and just
Okay.
knowing the steps.
Gotcha. So it was you felt like that there was just no way that you were gonna be able to solve this on your own. The confidence to actually then do those things, and then
Mhm.
really just kind of like "Well, I'm gonna do them, but what steps do I actually need to take?" Would that be
Yeah.
accurate? Okay.
Yeah, every step of the way with my current rental, like, I've gone back to the modules and like,
Oh,
okay,
really?
okay, my Google form, my pre-screening,
Right.
like, I literally copied it, changed a couple things,
Of
but did
course.
that. Held an open house,
Oh, good.
did my application. I've literally gone back to the module each time. So it's just been so beneficial because otherwise I'm just spending so much time Googling and figuring the things out on my own, and I'm
Right.
just like, I get so overwhelmed by
Yeah.
trying to do all of that. I
Right.
really, because I do have ADHD and it's difficult for me. to like sit down and concentrate. Whereas I really just like, I'm like, okay, I just need someone to tell me what to do. And then I can put the things into place. I can do it.
Right. I have to ask though, you s and, because I found this a very interesting statement that you came to a point. I think this is actually really interesting self-realization, which is why I wanna point it out.
Yeah.
But the fact that you said that you felt like you came to a point where you just knew you weren't gonna be able to solve that on your own. What
Hmm.
made what made you feel that way, if you remember?
Because I think it was so long of talking about it and thinking about it. And I was just like sick of thinking about it.
Really? Okay, so you were just like, "No, I've tried figuring this out. I've looked at it this way. I'm racking my brain. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it." And that's then when we ended up meeting because then you were interested in joining the inner circle.
Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like committing to that and saying like, "Okay, I'm gonna work with somebody that can have the answers that I'm looking for. This is a big step for me. This is real now."
Yeah. I mean, there was fear around that because I was like, okay, am I really going to do this?
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
spending a lot of money, you know. Also, like I'm not exactly in a financial place to do this. I knew I had a lot to work on with my credit and getting to a financial place to do this. So especially with it being like, I can't remember how long it like us meeting was like 6 to 9 months, but I was like, it's okay. I'm going to have the modules forever. Like I'm going to be able to have the resources. Like even if I don't do it within this time period, I will always be able to have the things to refer back to. Um,
Right.
and I knew just, just when you're ready, you're ready.
Yeah, I
That,
do.
that that's just how I felt.
And you were like, "I'm doing this."
I'm just doing it. Yeah.
Right.
And I
As
think,
we talked about, we kind of
you
said
know,
like, "We'll figure it out."
yeah. And I've worked in the health field a lot with people,
Mhm.
and you can't force people to do something. They have to be ready. And I feel like even in sales with your program, like you can't force someone to be ready. They have to be ready to do it. Even if they purchase it, they may not be
Right.
ready, but they have to be willing to put in the work.
Right. That's actually really interesting because I still talk to and really kind of handpick all the women that come into the inner circle. And I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time getting to know them and what their situation is and what's kind of going on. And one of the
Mhm.
things that I'm always evaluating in my mind is actually that question. Is
Mhm.
this woman ready for this?
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to get out of their own way? And I'm not saying it's easy, but
Yeah.
is this person really ready to take action? And I feel like that's a lot of what I evaluate because the other
Mhm.
question, that I sometimes look at with people coming to the program is like, oh, well, like, what's like the guarantee or like those things. And my answer is always like, I can guarantee my steps work. I can't guarantee you're going to show up or do anything,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
why like I spend so much time trying to look for and find really the women that are saying like, I am going to do this. Yeah, I need some guidance. Yeah, I need some support. Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we're going to find a way to do this.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I loved about you. You really came into this saying like, "Hey, I got, this might be a little area of a weakness, but I'm willing to make it work. Just give me the steps, give me the support, and kind of let
Mhm.
me fly." And I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Then when we started working together, then it really came down to what are we going to do for financing,
Yeah.
right? And then how can we also add in the ability to have that design control, to have that renovation, to be able to move forward,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And you did. You had some of the life changes that
Yeah.
took place, right?
Yeah.
That just life gets in the way. But what I loved is then it was a couple months later that you came back and were like, Becky, we have to look at this property.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about? Right? You were looking for a little while, right? You had some personal stuff that was going on that real estate just could not be the focal point during.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like property presents itself.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it too was I found a local group, which it was the hard money lender, and I had to meet their criteria, which was having a certain amount in my bank account. So I had to take money out of my 401k. So I had to have that amount of money in my bank account for 3 months. Well, within that time period, I quit my job. I had a hysterectomy.
Right, just minor
Just
things happening in life, as you
just
do on a
minor things.
Tuesday. Right.
So I was like, "Okay, I just have to, like, sit back and relax and let this 90 days like pass by, heal, start my new job, all the things. And then it was like back in April, I found this property and I was like, okay, well, it's been 90 days. I'm going to apply for the hard money loan. I'm
Mhm.
going to do the things. And it just kind of all panned out. And yeah, I'm coming to the end of everything now. So I have not refinanced yet, but I'm getting to that point.
Right. Let's
So,
talk about this property. It
mhm.
was exciting and interesting. It's an interesting property.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about the setup of this
yeah.
property.
So it's 114 years old, first of all.
So cool. I find that so cool. I like those old houses.
Yeah, and it's one main house with a little house in the backyard. And it's not the only house like this on the block. And
Mhm.
then it has a two-car garage in the very back. The kicker is there is a huge construction site right next door, and it
Mhm.
is a retirement home. So it's going to be very beautiful, but it's a huge construction site. And the main house was actually in great shape. Had a couple big things, not so great, but doable in a
Mhm.
construction loan. It has a tenant already in place who isn't on Section 8, but something like Section 8. So
Mhm.
guaranteed income every month, which is perfect.
Right.
She keeps it clean. She's great. So I inherited her. And then this little house in the back is in rough shape.
Well, I remember when we looked at this property and we talked about the construction zone kind of on the side. We
Yeah.
looked at the inspection report, but I remember when we first looked at this house, when you brought it to the inner circle, I remember there were no pictures of that
No,
little house.
no,
And we were like, I felt like the windows were blocked, things were boarded up, the
they
newspaper, I
were.
think it was. But I
Yeah.
just remember being like, oh, we need some more information about this, right? And I
Yeah.
think I told you, I'm like, go back and see what you can find out about that. That's that little the little house in the back because there was no information
Yeah.
at all shared about that.
So it is legal because
Mm-hmm.
it was built before zoning. So I can
Crazy
get
to think that was a thing, right?
so
You
I
could build
can
whatever
get
you
the
wanted.
SDR loan on it. So that's great because that was questionable. There are a lot of things that were questionable leading up, but everything has just gone pretty smoothly. But yeah, walking into this little house, the electric, nothing would turn on. It's like a crawl space underneath. The attic is like, I don't know, a foot, 2 foot high. Like my dad has been in it, but
Oh my God.
he can barely, I mean, thank goodness he's like tiny because you couldn't get up there if you were very big. But yeah, it's basically you walk in, it's a living room, a little galley kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom. That's
Everything you need.
everything you need. And it needed basically everything.
Yum.
Basically
That's what we were
everything.
guessing.
Yeah, but I mean, it was pretty cheap to renovate because it was so small
That is true.
and
There you
easy.
go. That's a positive to it.
Yeah.
So the small house in the back had to be completely redone. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. The
Mhm.
main house, it needed some things, right?
Like little
But
stuff.
nothing, not a huge renovation, right? That was
No.
it was the backspace. That was
Yeah.
really that. So what was
Mhm.
kind of nice for this part for you, it was kind of cool to say, okay, well, there's one space that's actually functioning,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, it needs some updates, but it's functioning. And then this
Mhm.
other space, which is small, manageable, was really kind of a great way to jump in,
Yeah.
right? And not be like, oh my God, here's a four family,
Mhm.
4,000 square feet that now will needs to be renovated. This
Yeah.
was a very doable project.
Yes. Yeah. And my dad did the majority of it by himself,
Aw.
which was a
Nice.
manageable project for first time I've paid him for
Ooh,
for his labor.
okay.
So
That's called adulting. When you give your parents money, that is adulting because
I know.
I thank God my mom did not run me a tab with all the times I have borrowed money from her over the
Oh,
years.
seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously, my dad has helped me so many times. So the fact that I paid him for every hour, I'm like, okay, yep, I did it.
Right, we made that
So,
official.
yeah.
Right.
So that feels good. But
How
yeah,
long did it take to do the renovations of that backspace?
I don't really know. Maybe
Was it
like,
like a month or like 6 months?
oh no, not 6 months. What is it? October. We added in last minute, I added in a fence. So it was probably like
Oh,
9, 10 weeks. Yeah.
right.
So I had a little bit of extra money left over because,
No one ever says that.
right?
Okay, we're gonna come back to that in a second, but keep going.
I had money left over. So what I did was I put a privacy fence around the small house, which really helped with the construction zone.
Ooh,
And it looks, I'll post some photos of it. It looks so much better.
yeah,
Also, it's an alley back there. And I just thought, like, I was single and young. That house really is for like a single person, maybe a couple. I just thought someone pulling into the garage, being able to come out the door with a fence, and
yeah.
then going into the house, that just you feel more safe. So anyway, that worked out well.
But that's also the design aspect that you really like, right? I am
Because
I
there
would
is a
just
little yard. If you have an
yeah,
eye, you can put a little table out there, some lights. It can look really cute.
right. As somebody that would describe their interior design aesthetic to utilitarian,
Yeah.
a fence probably would not have been something that I would have thought about, right? I would have been like, there's a toilet, there's a bed. What else do I need? Right. But that's what I thought was so cool about this. And I'm going to call it a project for you was
Mhm.
because it actually used your abilities and things that you actually enjoy. And I
Yeah.
love that forethought because that construction zone from the very beginning was your biggest concern.
Yeah.
I remember when we talked about this property, you weren't concerned about, oh, there's no pictures of the inside. Oh, the house is 114 years old. You're like, but Becky, there's a construction zone next to it. What are people going to do? That was the first thing that you said about it. So I love the fact that you really came up with such a great solution on what to do to give it that homey feel. Because as
Yeah.
much as I design from a utilitarian perspective, I
Mhm.
appreciate when people make things homey.
Yeah.
And so do
Yeah.
most renters.
Yeah.
So takes you 9, 10 weeks to really be able to kind of renovate that there. You
Mhm.
said that you had monies left over. Was that because budget came in for construction lower, or how did that happen that you had money left over?
Well, I had budgeted 8,500 to redo the whole sewer because
Okay.
I was told that that's what needed to be done. And apparently that's not what needed to be done. So I'm really glad I got a second opinion. Yeah. So I had all of that money left over.
You didn't have to do anything to the sewer?
No, I had to clean it out and have the clean out pulled up.
Yeah.
The front of the house sits up real high and it was underneath. Yeah.
I think that's why it's so important to get multiple estimates. I
Also it is.
remember there was a house that I bought, I guess like 2 years ago, a duplex up in Orange County, New York. It's the ugliest house you'll ever see in your entire life,
Mhm.
but makes good money, so I bought it. But it has this stairwell between the two units. And when you walked up the stairwell between the two units, it kind of was at a little bit of a side, right?
Mhm.
So we wanted to get it recarpeted, but I was like, this really annoys me. The stairs are uneven. So I set up a day where I had a couple other projects I needed. So I set up some people to come with some estimates. And it was so wild to see what these estimates came back with.
Oh
The
gosh.
first guy scared me to death. He was like, "Oh my God, this is so out of code. We need to rip this whole thing off the house. We need to detach it back because I guess it used to be an exterior staircase that was built. And because same thing, it was from the 1800s. It was an exterior staircase that went to the upstairs apartment and then it was
Mhm.
enclosed. And he's like, we got to like open this thing back up. We have to rebuild the whole staircase. We have to take down, put in a new foundation for it. And then like the next guy that came was like, yeah, I can level them out. Yeah, I could do that for you. We just
Yeah.
have to, get an actual level and, lift up the other side of the stairs. Then,
Yeah.
and it was just, I think I had like 3 or 4 guys come and everyone gave me a completely different answer with a completely different price. And it was
Yeah.
really interesting then as the CEO of our business for us to then have to make that decision of
Yeah.
kind of the who's right, who's wrong,
I
what
know.
what money should we invest in this, what counts as that quality that we clearly want for our rental properties.
Yeah.
So it reminds me very much of that, but that's why I always get multiple estimates.
I know.
But
Because the person, and I've realized this about the specific person, is that they always come in and they're like, "This whole thing needs to be ripped out." And I'm like, "Does it really though?" You
I hope
know?
he never listens to this episode, but that's my brother.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think he'll
The
listen.
tile's wrong, so we'll just rip out the whole floor of the house, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
why don't we just fix the tile? But there's absolutely times to do that or that it might be needed, but it sounds like in this case it wasn't. So that left you with a whole bunch of money left over.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, which I had not gone over on anything.
that's
I'm
amazing.
gonna say though, having my dad was cheap labor. I actually had
Right.
this is funny. So I actually had a dream that my dad was like, "On your next project, I'm charging you $185 an hour." And I was like, "What?"
That's so specific too.
It was so
You got
specific.
I hope you played those numbers in the lottery or something.
No,
You
I
gotta
should
go do that. If you have a number
but
in your dream, go
but I
for it.
was like, "Dad," he helped me out, and I'm very appreciative because,
Right.
especially on a first project, I'm definitely looking to, like, stay in budget.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, you know, not go crazy here, but yeah,
So now you got the lady in the main house
yeah.
still living there, right? So money's still coming in there.
Mhm.
How was it renting the tiny house? Did you get a
So
lot of hits? I mean, that sounds like a specific space. What
yeah.
was it like trying to find the right tenant for that?
So, I thought I had a tenant. It was actually a construction worker from the site.
Hmm.
The day he came to sign the lease, my dad was going to sign the lease with him, and my dad when it was going over it, and he said, "No smoking." And he was like, "Are you serious?" And my dad called me and he was like, "Are you serious about the no smoking?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Are you sure? Are you really gonna turn him away right now?" I didn't share this in the group.
Right.
And I was like, "Yes, I'm turning him away." And my dad was like, "Really?" And I'm like,
Wow.
"Just let him go, dad. It's fine." And
Yeah.
so I turned him away and I was like, "You know what? I had some bad feelings about it anyway." And
Okay.
I even told my dad, "Becky said that the good people will come." Okay. I'm like,
He's probably
"It's
like this
fine, it's fine, it's fine. It'll all be fine." And so I posted it on Facebook. I can't even tell you how many people messaged me.
wow.
Didn't respond to any of the messages, only the people who did the pre-screening.
Good. You I
And
love
like
it. I love it. You're following
only
the process.
only a quarter of those people actually responded to me from the pre-screening
Mhm.
to come to the open house. I think like 3 people actually came to the open house, and then one of those people signed the lease.
Because
All you need is one. Yeah,
all you need is one.
and she is great.
Aw,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
yeah.
Good. I'm glad you followed the process that we set in place. You stuck to it. You saved yourself so much time and energy.
Oh my
And that's
gosh.
exactly what you did was weed out the wrong people,
Yeah,
right? I feel like if it was my father, I would have just said back to him being like, you just built this entire thing. And now you're going to have to redo the thing to be able to get out that smell when this
yeah.
person moves out, right? Um,
Well, my dad's a smoker, so he doesn't think
he
anything about
wouldn't have
it,
noticed. Yeah.
and
I
I'm
was
like,
actually
"Dad,
going to
this is
ask
all
you if
brand
he.
new. I'm not gonna let someone smoke in here."
Right. And to me, that's a very standard thing
Yeah,
for every rental,
yes.
especially, from insurance perspective. But like
Yeah.
that's a pretty normal thing that you cannot smoke. Like that's very, very typical this day and age. Once again, my father was a smoker. I was actually
Mhm.
going to ask if your dad did smoke
Yeah.
when he was younger, but yeah, if he's a smoker, then I definitely see that. But
Mhm.
really then the process that you went through was to weed out all those people that were wrong, which you
Yeah,
did. All
yeah.
you needed was the right person to come through that. And that's why that screening system is set up that way, because it continues to push forward the people that have the greatest chance to making it to the finish line.
Yeah,
And that's exactly what happened here. So
yeah,
now she's here. You're 6 months in now, right? Because you said now is going to be the time that you're looking at refinance.
yeah,
Close.
yeah.
Not
I'm
there
like, yeah,
yet.
3 to 4 months. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Okay. So what's our next project, Paige?
I don't know. I was just thinking about it this
Ooh.
morning. I was like, I could probably pick something up before the end of the year.
I feel like there's some. I'm my the CPA accountant in the back of my brain is like, yes, do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So would you do another fixer upper?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you found a great niche within real estate for that.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it went pretty well. I mean, there were a few hiccups,
Of course.
of but It was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like the more and more, because this is what, my 1, 2, like, 3rd bigger renovation,
Yeah.
it just becomes easier to deal with the problems.
Right. You've either seen more things, you've dealt your way around them.
And having, like, and it not all coming out of my pocket now, like, having a construction loan, I'm like, it's much easier just to, like, okay, like, I had to buy a couple new fridges, whatever. It's You can play with the money. Like, I personally, the first 2 renovations I did, I was using all of my own money. Oh my gosh. That was a lot more stressful.
Yeah.
So this is I feel like getting into it, getting past the first 2, this is the 3rd. I've learned something new every time, and I've
Yeah.
gained so much knowledge. I feel seasoned at this point. Even when I met you for the first time, I was like, even though I still feel new, but
Hmm.
I know that I have knowledge.
Yeah. You absolutely do. You have experience that's going to help you with better rates also with lenders moving forward, but you can see your confidence has really grown over that time.
Yeah,
If you could go back and say something to Paige on day one or day zero of when you and I'd met, what would you say to her now?
you can do it. You've got this. Because it really is true. I mean, I think I knew I could, but there was doubt. There definitely was doubt there. Like, can I really?
I
No.
agreed very much with that assessment because, like I said, like we were talking about before, like you really came in being like, I'm going to do this. I have no idea how.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would make this work, but I'm going to do that. I think that's a very accurate statement. I felt like you really came into this knowing that you could, but I
Mhm.
felt like just some of the gaps that you had were
Mhm.
making you have that self doubt. And
Yeah.
the gaps were really just because you hadn't done it. It wasn't
Mhm.
anything more. It wasn't you were smart enough, you were capable enough,
Mhm.
you were resourceful enough. And I
Mhm.
really enjoyed learning those signs of you. But I felt
Mhm.
like it was just that the fact that it was something new that you hadn't done and the education, right? Schools aren't teaching this to us. Like we didn't have like a woodworking class over here in New York
Yeah.
growing up. Maybe some places around the world do, but we don't.
Yeah.
Um, I felt like it was just those were just skills that you just hadn't had the opportunity to learn up until that point in life. But that did not mean at all in any way that you were not capable of doing so. And I
Yeah.
love the fact that you kind of came back to school now as an adult, learn those skills, and are out there actually doing this now.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things for me too is like asking for help.
Mm,
I I still struggle with it. Like, I could still benefit from posting more, or like being involved in community. I still struggle with that aspect, but yeah,
do you feel like now that doubt that you had before has either dissipated or at least lessened?
yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think you should show up more so we can talk about how to take down the next one.
Yeah.
Good. That'll be our plan. So hopefully 2024 Paige, we'll be hearing about you getting another property. If not, I'm sure that is on the docket for the start of 2025, right?
Yeah. My goal this year was two. So at the beginning of the year.
You got plenty of time. Based on
Yeah.
the date that we're recording this on, you have plenty of time to pick up another one. I'd
Yeah.
love to see you do that.
Yeah.
Love to. All
Yeah.
right. Well, Paige, thank you very much for walking us through the story. We're going to have you back on when you pick up the next one next
Yeah.
year to kind of share how you were able to take down that one. But thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing and giving our community your time to share your story. I know that there are other women out there that are feeling like they really can go out and do this too and get rid of the doubt that they have in the back of their head. So I appreciate you sharing yours.
Of course.
Ladies, thank you very much for joining us today for today's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. Please do make sure to hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. We release new episodes every single Tuesday. Also, if you enjoyed today's episode, and I know you did, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Reviews help make sure that other women can find our community and get the support that they are looking for as well. Otherwise, see you all back in the Lady Landlords Facebook group.
Thank you for listening to the Lady Landlords podcast. If you're feeling stuck in your real estate investing journey, Visit lady-landlord.com to book a 15-minute orientation call with me and see if you're ready to join our mentorship program. Or you can subscribe to our newsletter and join our Facebook group for exclusive real estate investing tips and offers. Invest with confidence. Become a Lady Landlord today.